I want to ask you about the relationship that you see between liberalism and democracy. And here, let me just set it up this way. I have argued more, successfully, sometimes not so successfully others, that democracy doesn't make theoretical sense without liberalism, which is to say,
Mm.
without equal rights, there is no legitimate theoretical or moral reason to affirm political equality. Right. So,
Yeah.
the old saw about, democracy is two wolves and a pig deciding what's for dinner. That's not democracy because all those, every person, every part of that conversation, every part of that vote has status and has rights. And if they don't have that, then democracy is just
Might makes
power,
right.
right? Tyranny of the majority. And I'm wondering whether or not you agree with and what you think about that and how you understand the relationship between these two really big and important terms.
So I think that interestingly, we superficially disagree and we deeply agree. So I'll run it up this way so that if you look at the history of liberalism, so we live today in a liberal democratic world, and we think that those two things just work together. It's like peaches and cream. It's like that little hyphen between those two words just makes it appear like a coherent package. And that may be true today. But the fact is that historically that took a lot of work and negotiation to achieve. So liberalism was a 19th century doctrine born in rebellion against Napoleon, and especially in reaction to the French Revolution and to its perceived populism. And for the first kind of like 40 years of liberal developments, and here we have really great thinkers. I'm talking Benjamin Constant, Alexis de Tocqueville, Mill is a kind of tricky case. But all
Mm-hmm.
of these people were liberals, but they were terrified of democracy. And
Sure.
some of the more kind of reactionary ones, the kind of aristocratic liberals, just tried to close the door on democracy. Others were a bit more kind of like not just open minded, but realists. Like Tocqueville, he's like, okay, this
Realist.
is
That's
happening.
certainly
We got to
Tocqueville. Yeah.
deal. And so then they tried to forge a compromise. But the harmony between liberalism and democracy is a hard won achievement, where especially liberalism was created to be a kind of prophylactic or a protection against certain populist urges. So if you go through your head and just list all the major liberal institutions, individual rights, division of powers, judicial review, all that stuff, all of those are expressly counter-majoritarian institutions. They're all
Mm-hmm.
designed to like pump the brakes in some important ways about potential excesses of democracy. So that reconciliation took a long, long time. What I see in the world today, and so I'm going to bounce the question actually back to you. What I see in the world today, when I look around at all the kind of challengers and critics of liberal democracy, is that I don't see them as undemocratic. I see them as illiberal. And in particular,
Mm-hmm.
what I see them doing is putting a
Oh, I
crowbar or
see.
prizing apart democracy on the one hand and then liberalism on the other hand. And for me, that makes a lot of, I'm not saying that's normatively good, but I think that that's descriptively kind of accurate. That I
Accurate.
don't think it's, if you see democracy in narrow terms, like sovereignty of the people and majority
Right.
decision, then the wolves pig example is democratic, right? It is a
Mm-hmm.
domination of a minority by a majority, but by majority rule. And that might be what's going on in many parts of the world today, that majorities are happy to assert themselves without too many scruples over minorities. And it can still be democratic in the sense of popular sovereignty and kind of numerically majority of will of the majority, but it's not liberal democratic. So I think it's analytically important to call a country like right now, like Hungary or India
Mm-hmm.
or Turkey or Russia. I think that it's important to call those democracies, but I think it's very important to call them illiberal democracies. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's that prizing apart that I think is very important. What do you think about that?
No, I mean, that's illiberal democracy is straight out of Orban's mouth in Hungary, and I do think you're right that the way that democracy goes south is when it becomes um, populism and becomes reactive and moves quickly, right, without thinking or without any kind of sense of ethics or let alone long-term planning, right. And I do think you're right that just about every you know extant version of a liberal democracy has those breaks in place. But in U.S. context, and really just about every other democracy that's been founded since then, there are there part of that founding is some listing of rights,
Mm.
and those are not merely structural or procedural, they're moral, right? That as part of us moving in this, in order to make a more perfect union, we have to agree to these things. And these things are grounded in the idea that we are all free and equal.
Yes.
And that's where we have to start. And if we don't start there, democracy is nothing more than, cannot be anything more than tyranny of the majority, no matter what structures we have.